But what are your genuine motivations? And let's dig as deeply as possible. And let's find the most powerful ones and then attach this activity to those powerful motivations that you have.
For a long time in my early 20s, I had a business and I chased money as my goal. I wanted the Bentley, I wanted a nice car, I wanted a nice house, I wanted to look successful. And I didn't take the intangibles of that business and the actual focus of what that business was trying to do and focus on that and focus on a passion and focus on something that actually meant something. And that business failed and it was a tremendous failure. And I learned so many lessons from that, but the biggest lesson of all is that you should not focus on the money. You should focus on passion. You should focus on something that makes you happy. You should focus on something that makes other people happy. And that is the true success. Money is just a result of that. But when you start to focus on the money, that is where the issue comes in. Today I'm speaking to an expert, Nic Voge, on exactly that. How when we stop focusing on money, we can have success. But if our focus is on money, and we don't focus on passion, the issues that can arise, and how if we want real success, we should start focusing on a passion. Today's video is sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world. Link in the description, 100% of the profits go back to making this content. Before that, let's jump into this incredible video with Nic Voge. I'm your host, Jordan Mulligan. Let's jump into the video.
I think a lot of people find that looking back at their journey, when they switched focus away from money and focused on the reason or attached a purpose to it or a reason to it, that it came anyway. And I think when you have that singular view on about the figure and about the money, and while I agree with you, I do think we can still have self-worth and it can help other people through having that money. But I think I see a lot of people focus on just the money and not the reason why they're trying to do it, and they get lost. And hollow is the perfect word for that. It becomes hollow.
There's such a powerful message in society that there are these certain values or motivations are somehow better than others. And so certainly in the world I work in, academia, you're supposed to pursue learning for a love of learning, and anything else is crass and less than. And I really reject that and I resist it. But also students do too. Then they say, well, you have nothing to say to me. The reality is I need to focus on the grades and achieve. And so then they just ignore that. And my message is that there are different kinds of motivations. Different motivations have different consequences. They have different impact on our thinking, our emotions, our actions, our choices, and therefore our outcomes. And that you want to choose the ones that work for you. And in fact, a single-minded focus on an extrinsic reward is typically not the best way to achieve, actually. It's some combination. So the problem is not the desire to get good grades. That's the context I work in, or to make money. The problem is, just as you said, it's a single-minded focus on that to the exclusion of other outcomes and especially other motives. And not because it's, again, the moral dimension, because that single-minded focus ultimately will probably not be fulfilling to you. Because that's not what people are driven by and motivated by more things. And if you only focus on one, you put all your eggs in that one motivational basket and don't put that attention, in the end, it probably will leave you unfulfilled and perhaps hollow.
Okay. No, I love it. So let's just stick on this for a point then.
Sure.
Is there a perfect combination? I know it's going to be different for each person, but is there a perfect combination of motivations?
I don't think so. Not a general one. Not a general one. So I think my study of procrastination has taught me something that seems kind of contradictory. I'm going to say that there are some general principles of motivation that apply to virtually everyone. And yet, in the case of procrastination, what I've learned is everybody's procrastination is idiosyncratic. So it's individual. So both those things are true. So I think that applies. Let me put it this way. From my perspective, what's interesting to me about motivation is actually the individual variety. So I'm actually a little more interested in that. And there are people who are much better, more skilled and knowledgeable than I to speak about general patterns and maybe optimal patterns of motivation. So there, perhaps that can be answered. I don't have an answer, and in part because I'm just not interested in it. I work with individual people most of the time. Many researchers don't, but I'm working with one person across the table from me, or if I'm doing a workshop, you know, it's still individual. And so what I notice is it's not so much some perfect combination or pattern, you know. It's the same thing with productivity, you know, tweaking 5 minutes or 10 minutes there over the course of a lifetime probably doesn't really generate that much difference. The question is, are you in the right direction? Is your efforts and work in general focused on that? But anyway, so I would say that there may be for an individual some ideal, but I couldn't know it. Because that's the nature of motivation, is it's internal. I could never know it for you.
Okay, so if I was to come to you, how would you take a look at my weaknesses and point me in the right direction? And is it also something that we can change? Is it something, or will we always result back to a default of motivation?
Great question. So I'm thinking of a conversation I had yesterday afternoon. I did a workshop at Princeton, and a student stuck around, and the workshop was not on motivation. And she just said, I'm having trouble getting motivated for this class. It's my most important one, but my least interested one. And oh, by the way, it's early in the morning. What do I do? So I think the first thing I said is, well, and is why you in this class? And we unpacked that in multiple levels. But the one thing, what I'm trying to do there is not say you should be motivated by this, but what are your genuine motivations? And let's dig as deeply as possible, and let's find the most powerful ones, and then attach this activity to those powerful motivations that you have. So another way to say that is, what is your motivational profile? I'm going to help you articulate that, surface it, articulate it, write it out. And then what I can do is then we talk about what are methods and techniques to bring those motivations into your mind and body when you need them, right? How do you do that? What are the techniques? When do you need them? When's the point when you feel low motivation? When do you not need them? Okay, well, let's be creative. How could you do this by certain messages? So how do you use your phone actually to remind you of your motivations instead of to remind you of your tasks? How could you interact socially? Can you create a social network that supports your motivation? Are there routines and rituals that you could bring in that are focused on motivation and your motivation? So, and then, then there's other layers. Then we might shift to, okay, what are the obstacles to right? Because there's one thing to talk about all the positives and align those. And then we might want to say, well, what gets in the way? What are the obstacles? Are there particular ways of thinking? So this is something I do a lot with people, is I listen very carefully, and I'll notice that they talk, and you've probably heard this, they talk in a certain way when they're reporting out their self-talk. They actually shift tones. And then they say something like, and then I said to myself, blah, blah, blah. And they actually talk a little bit different. And I listen, and if I hear people say the same phrase multiple times, I'll say, hey, that sounds kind of weird, but do you actually hear yourself saying that? Are you saying yourself that phrase? And they'll say, oh yeah. I said, well, what's the effect of that talk? And then we work on that. So then we're digging in. Okay, well, is that a true statement? Yeah, it's mostly true. Okay, so it's a true statement. What's another true statement that would actually help you move forward and tap into your motivation? It's also true, I'm not pretending, but that we could replace that other statement. So that statement is true, but it prevents you or poses an obstacle to attaining your goal. It kind of leads you to, oh, I could do it later. That's a common one. I could do it later. True, but not helpful. Not helpful for getting started, not helpful for sustaining work. So let's find another one. Oh, a simple, obvious one is, I could do it later, but if I do it now, I'll have more free time later. And on Sunday, I want to watch the football game. And so if I do it now, I can watch the football game on Sunday. Both true statements. Which one's going to get you started? Which one's going to sustain your effort? So that's an example of how I work with people. But so at the one level, it's what are your powerful motivations? But what are the self-talk? What are the habits? What's in your environment? Every time you open up your computer, does a thought pop into your head? I wonder if I have an email. That's a lot of people do that. I do that. And that can easily take us away from why we open up our laptop to begin with, and then get us down a rabbit hole of links and reading and busy work instead of, right, I was going to write my business proposal. And every time I do it, I open up my computer and I'm drawn away. So, but may not be, maybe it's something else. So in my one-to-one work, I basically say, imagine there's a camera tracking you. Describe in detail what I would see if I was watching a video. And then once we have that, then we can say, well, what's going on internally? We can unpack it and then begin to bring some tools and techniques that address the particular dimension. So if it's an emotional one, every time I open up my computer, I feel dread and anxiety in my gut. That's different than I hear myself say this, right? Or my social media accounts are open on my laptop all the time. All of these things are slightly different obstacles that can be susceptible to different techniques as we intervene. And some of them are motivational, but some are more like just behavioral.
Thank you so much to Nic Voge. For me, this is a thing that is not taught, and it's one of those things that I feel you need to find out for yourself. I chased money for years. In fact, my first 3 businesses were based on money, and one of them made me a lot of money, but I was extremely unhappy. One of them, the one that I thought would make me the most money, which was a gym, made me no money and also made me unhappy. And I take that one as an example because the focus should have been on creating a community and change within these people's lives who were visiting the gym and these members. And we had all those things, I just didn't focus on them. Instead, I focused on making more money. It seems so materialistic, but I really wanted a Bentley. I wanted to earn enough money to get a Bentley. I wanted to make enough money that I could buy nice things and have nice things and look successful and be perceived as successful from other people. At the end of the day, money is just a number. There is a number in your bank account that keeps going up. And for me, when I had real change in business and when I actually made real money was when I switched and focused on passion. And I focused on making change in people's lives. I focused on this thing that became successful because the driving force behind it wasn't a figure that could keep going up. The driving force behind it was making change in people's lives. I woke up every single day motivated and inspired to work as hard as I possibly could. When it's money, it's harder to wake up, especially when you're not making money. The idea of moving forward as the hardest worker possible, and it's just the money that's the motivator, is a lot more difficult. And that's my personal experience. Nic describes it much better, and I can't thank him enough. Today's video was sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world, where you can get the Rise and Grind series, the Hardest Worker in the Room series, and the Inspire Change series with the link in the description. 100% of the profits go back into creating this content and making content for free. So thank you so much to you guys who have helped support us. If you want to see what I get up to on Instagram, go follow me on Instagram at Jordan Mulliganbrother. But the most important thing, guys, go inspire some change. Move forward with passion and purpose. Little do we know who's watching what we are doing, and you might just inspire change in their lives too. Have a blessed and productive day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.